right. Hello, everyone watching through YouTube. And hello to everyone here on the Discord. I'm glad that you are here at this moment. So, one moment here. So, we're all here at this present moment to wake up. Especially Anushka has been sleeping and just waking up right now. So, literally here to wake up. And we are also here to wake up our sincerity and our efforts to do good, our efforts to develop the mind, more peace, more happiness, more joy, less suffering, less complicatedness. We are here to really get involved in our life. So somehow, if we want to really get involved in our life, especially training the mind, what we need to do is to stop what we are doing right now. So what are you doing right now? Johnny, what are you doing right now?
I'm getting into a comfortable pose to start meditating.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds about right. How about Steph? What are you doing right now?
I'm laying down, trying to get ready to meditate.
Okay, laying down and getting comfortable. So, whatever we are doing, we should stop that. And so, if we are getting ready to lay down and meditate, we should stop doing that. We should simply lay down and meditate and be done with that. If we are getting into a comfortable meditation pose right now, we should stop doing that. If we are hosting a group meditation session and sitting in a throne with the support of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, we should stop doing that. So if we stop doing everything, what happens? We find this curious situation when we wake up and we stop going back to sleep. We wake up and we stop doing that. We stop participating in a sleepiness. So somehow this practice of stopping what you're doing right now enables you to do more and more, enables you to be free from what you are doing, to be free from your attachment to what you are doing right now. So in this way of stopping whatever we are doing right now, make sure that you are comfortable. Let's take a few moments before we get into some teaching today, some teaching and learning, supported by a great monk meditation master. We'll be looking at some teachings today. Let's start by stopping. So find your comfortable, stable position. Stop whatever you are doing. Just taking these few moments to be uninvolved with doing anything at all. Anything that you start to do, anything that you start to get involved with or reacting to, just come back to ending the involvement with whatever that is. How willing are we to stop what we are doing, to give up whatever we are doing right now? It's very enjoyable to stop what we are doing, right? It's one of the most pleasant and rejuvenating and refreshing activities that we can do, is to stop what we are doing. We usually think about that as a sleep, right? But in this case, with a full awareness, with a full presence, with a zeal, with a vigor, stop being involved. When you notice yourself getting involved with something, stop that. That's not so much a rejection or doing something by force, but you just to stop what you're doing. We don't need to use force to stop what we are doing. We need to use force to do things. If we want to go deeper into our truth, spirituality, awakening, Buddhist, meditation, Being willing to stop what you're doing is at the core of it. You're on TikTok scrolling. Stop it. You're jumping back and forth from thought to thought. Stop it. You are confused. What am I doing? What's going on here? Stop that. Stop what you're doing right now. No more doing. Just being. Just breathing. Just being aware. Breathe deeply and go into that practice. That joyful experience of being without contrivance, without production, without force, without effort. We get sick, we take medicine, and we continue. Getting sick once, encountering a difficulty that needs care, does not mean that we find the nearest 6-foot hole and crawl in. We have to restart, we have to refresh, take care of the wound, give your attention to the distraction, the difficulty, and continue. Stop what you're doing and continue being, breathing, finding out what this reality is all about. Don't rely on someone else's eyes to see it. How wonderful and joyful it is to put down all of our activity, all of our involvement, all of our self, all of our past, all of our future, and to just be. Get into the habit of putting down and letting go. Putting down that right thought, that true thought, that good thought, that bad thought. As it comes up, as you get involved with it, get into the habit of putting it down, not being involved with it. This is a time to get involved with being uninvolved. Aren't you curious about this? Don't you want to know about this? This moment, this life, this body, this mind, this breath, the ground of reality itself at this moment. Aren't you interested? So, if you're interested, you may not be at the right place, but you are at this place. And this place is the place to put forth our greatest interest and our greatest curiosity. So, we're going to get into our teaching and our learning period of our time together. You can continue to be in a meditative state, very focused meditative state, or you can relax a little bit, but you should listen to these kinds of teachings, wisdom teachings from an embodied place. You listen from the heart, you listen from the breath, you listen from being willing to continuously stop what you're doing and just to listen, open up to these teachings. They come from a very profound, deep, and meaningful place. The 8 winds. Profit and loss, praise and blame, defamation and fame, suffering and joy. all of these are impermanent, and thus, why should any of them cause satisfaction or dissatisfaction? So these are, in Buddhism, called the 8 winds: profit and loss, defamation and fame, praise and blame, suffering and joy. All of these are impermanent, and thus, why should any of them cause satisfaction or dissatisfaction? The 8 winds are the 8 conditions mentioned in the first 2 lines of the verse above. The Buddha taught that these 8 conditions are a natural part of life. All of us will experience each of these states many, many times in many, many lives. The Buddha also taught that we should not allow ourselves to be blown off course by any of the 8 winds. Instead, we should regard them as temporary conditions that present us with a chance to learn something new. As long as we feel unduly concerned or involved in about any of them, we can be sure we still have something to learn. If we do not stop and think deeply about all of the 8 winds, we will tend to believe that profit, fame, praise, and joy are better than loss, defamation, blame, and suffering. This tendency is a very good access point that can help us understand to just what degree we believe that the delusion of having a separate self is real. So this tendency to believe that pleasure, profit, fame are better than loss, defamation, blame, pain, this tendency to feel that way, and we all feel that way, we all have this kind of habituated mindset that pleasurable things are good and painful things are bad, right? But we also know that this is not true and is basically just ridiculous nonsense. Just because something is pleasurable does not mean that it's good. Pleasurable things are not better than things that are painful, in the same way that just because something is painful doesn't mean that it's good. So this notion that pleasure is better than pain is completely faulty. It's not true. But we feel that it is. So this tendency to feel that way is a very good access point that can help us understand to just what degree we believe that the delusion of having a separate self is real. So the degree to which we think that pleasure is good and pain is bad, or that getting things is better than putting things down, is a kind of metric for the degree to which we believe that having a separate self or a permanent self is real, is true. The highest goal of Buddhism is to become fully enlightened within the perfect wisdom of our inherent Buddha nature. This wisdom completely transcends all delusions of selfhood. This state has been achieved many times by Buddhists in the past, and there is no reason why it cannot be achieved by many of us who are alive today. Contemplating the impermanence and essential sameness of all of the 8 winds is a very good method for helping us see beyond the delusions of the self-centered self. So, contemplating, bringing to mind deeply that profit and loss are both impermanent. If you get some kind of profit, it's not going to stay around. You're going to lose it. If you experience loss, that's also not going to stay around. You're going to lose loss. The same with fame and the opposite of fame, disrepute, defamation. If you are praised, it is impermanent. If you are blamed, it is impermanent. So the fundamentals of these experiences are relying on impermanence. But according to how strongly we are holding on to this idea of a real separate self, we imagine them to be permanent, right? Because it's my fame, it's my profit, it's my suffering, my joy, my loss. And so when it's this my, it has to be permanent. Otherwise, there's nothing there. It's temporary, and that myness, that I-ness is also very temporary. So through recognizing and contemplating deeply this impermanence of profit and loss, defamation and joy, pleasure and pain, we can start to see beyond the delusions of a self-centered self. That is, the delusions of this is mine and this is permanent, and that this is separate from anything else. So also looking at the essential sameness of the eight winds. That pain and pleasure are both based in a kind of stimulation. It's our preference that is not the same. It's our I don't like that, or our I like that is a little bit different. But the sensations themselves are not good or bad inherently. They're not pleasurable or painful inherently. They're just sensations. But it's our perception about it that distinguishes, the myness in it that distinguishes if it's pleasurable or painful. And that myness is always changing. This is also the same for something like fame or disrepute. It's this same energy, it's this same feeling, only it's our myness that determines that we don't like that, or we don't want that kind of perception. If we want that kind of perception, and if we think that it supports what our I-ness, we call it fame. If we don't like that perception, public perception, and we think that it doesn't support our I-ness, we call that disrepute, the opposite of fame, right? So there's an essential sameness to these experiences and to these eight winds. It's just wind. It's just an experience, and it's temporary. There's no I to be found in it. Try to find an I in a checkbook. You won't. The joy mentioned among the eight winds is samsaric joy, the transitory, temporary joy of the phenomenal world, not the joy that is a natural part of the enlightened mind. Think about the eight winds. Is fame really so wonderful? Is profit all we want from life? Is praise always good for us? Deep analysis of any loss will always bring us to a higher level of wisdom. I think that's very good teaching here. Deep analysis, deep intimacy with loss, any loss, will always bring us to a higher level of wisdom. Would we really be stimulated to contemplate life's inherent transience if everything went the way we wanted all the time? Would we really be stimulated or encouraged to step onto the path of deepening our wisdom, deepening our understanding, if our life was just privileged and pleasurable all the time? The 8 winds are winds. They come and go. They arise like the weather. Tomorrow will always be different from today. There is a Chinese text called Instructions Pertaining to the Royal Samadhi of Contemplating the Buddha. The text contains excellent advice on how to remain even-minded and balanced no matter which wind is blowing today. It teaches us to look deeply into our circumstances so that we will be able to derive the greatest benefit from them. This work contains the following 10 points. So please listen deeply. Concerning the body. Do not ask to be free from all illness, for when the body is free of all illness, greed quickly arises. When greed has arisen, our conduct focusing on virtue and skillfulness, restraint, is quickly broken, and progress becomes regression. So when everything is comfortable, when everything is easy, we are easy to be lazy. We're easy to overindulge. And overindulgence leads to chasing after deeper overindulgence, breaking our code of conduct, breaking our emphasis on being good, doing good. Concerning the body, do not ask to be free of all illness, for when the body is free of all illness, for when the body is free of all adversity or difficulty or unpleasantness, greed quickly arises. Self-fixated desire quickly arises. Concerning the management of worldly affairs, do not ask that any chore be an easy one, for when things go too easily, pride is soon born in the mind. When pride is born in the mind, one soon becomes flippant and deceitful, careless, inconsiderate. Concerning thought, do not ask that thinking always be without obstruction. For when thinking is without obstruction, it quickly becomes feverish and irregular. When thinking becomes feverish and irregular, one will soon become deluded and believe that the false is true and the true is false. Concerning the practice of Buddhism, and meditation for that matter, do not ask that there be no trials, no great difficulties, no great boundaries, barriers on your path. For when one is never tried, when one is never challenged, one's vows, one's deeper intentions will not be strong. When one's deeper intentions, vows are not strong, one can easily be led into believing that one has achieved what one has not achieved. So these trials, these difficulties, these barriers that we encounter, these great challenges that we encounter are really valuable. Concerning the making of plans, do not ask that they always be easily made, for when plans are easy to make, one's willpower becomes weak and ineffectual. When the will is weak and ineffectual, one is easily led to believe that one's abilities are less than they are. If it's easy to make plans, our will be weak. We're easily to give up. At that time, we are easily led to believe that one's abilities are less than they are. We are led to believe that we cannot continue when we can continue. We underestimate ourselves. We put ourselves down. And then we don't take on the challenge. We don't take on the trials in our life to continue, to do our best, to exceed our own expectations, to do good deeds more and more, not to give up easily, but to have a strong will, to follow through, to experiment with acting out our vows, our deeper intentions. Maybe you don't need to go to sleep. Maybe you don't need to take a break. You don't need to take a rest. You can continue. So, when one's will is weak, which is easy to happen when it's easy to make plans and easy to make things go our way, one is easily led to believe that one's abilities are less than they are, and we will not apply ourselves to the degree that we can, for our own benefit and for the benefit of others. Concerning friendship, do not ask that matters always go your way, for when one always gets one's own way, one soon will lose a sense of right and wrong. When one loses a sense of right and wrong, one quickly slides into the tendency to blame others for anything that goes awry. So do not ask that things always go your way. When they don't, when things don't go your way, you learn about what's right and what's wrong. When things always go your way, you don't know about right and wrong. You only know about what you like and what you want. So things not going our way helps us to establish that sense of right and wrong. And then we quickly slide into a tendency to blame others for anything that goes awry. Concerning people, do not ask that others always follow your lead. For when others always follow one's lead, one will soon become arrogant. When one has become arrogant, one will begin to grasp tightly onto the attachments of the ego. Concerning morality, do not ask for rewards for moral behavior. For if one is always rewarded for moral behavior, one will soon become calculating in everything one does. Once one has become calculating, one will begin to crave fame and a good reputation. So do not ask for rewards for moral behavior. Just be good. Don't care about the effect. If you're focused on the effect, there will be consequences. Concerning profits, do not always ask to obtain a part of them, for when one always gets a part of all profits, one soon will become lazy and dull. Once one has become lazy and dull, one will quickly hurt oneself. It's just like a Pokemon hurts itself in its confusion. We hurt ourselves in our laziness and our dullness. Concerning false accusations, Do not try to justify yourself or make explanations, for self-justifications only increase the illusion of having a separate self. Once this illusion of a separate self arises, thoughts of anger and revenge soon will follow. And I think that we can experience this last one not only in the mind, and I think for all of them, but when we are accused falsely, maybe from an ignorant or a place of ill will, our immediate reaction is, I'm not bad, I'm good. What you're saying isn't right. It's not true. But when we try to justify ourselves or make explanations in those kinds of situations, especially when they're very public, right? Those self-justifications only increase the illusion of having a separate self. Really, there's no one to blame. There's no one to be blamed. It's cause and effect. It's causes and conditions, things happen. Once this illusion of a separate self arises, once you start to self-justify or you start to make explanations, once this illusion of a separate self arises, thoughts of anger and revenge soon will follow. Not just in yourself, but in the people who are coming from a place of ill will or negativity, whatever it might be. So don't perpetuate this false self, this separate self. Once we have learned to think in the ways described above, that is to accept false accusations, that is to accept profits not being distributed in the way that you want them to, that is to accept that your good actions are not necessarily going to be rewarded, that is to accept that people will not always follow your way, that is to accept that plans are not always easily made, that is to accept that trials and difficulties are supporting factors for our development, that is to accept that thinking sometimes has difficulty and barriers and obstructions, and this allows us to not be so deluded, to accept that chores are not always easy, and by them not being always easy, we can be humbled, to accept that illness allows us to have a appreciation of health. Illness helps us to be grateful. If you're never ill, if you never experience the sickness of the body, you can become very greedy and very foolish. Once we have learned to think in the ways described above, we will be much closer to being able to concentrate on what we are doing and not on what we are getting. We were talking about this recently, this kind of idea. So once we have learned to think in the ways described above, which really is talking about this understanding that adversity is advantageous if we approach it in the right way. If we have the right perspective and the right way of taking care and being with that adversity is advantageous. Difficulty is advantageous. It helps us to develop. Once we have learned to think in the ways described above, we will be much closer to being able to concentrate on what we are doing and not on what we are getting. The value of this life and of all our future lives is determined by what we are doing now and not by what we are getting now. What we are getting now doesn't matter. It's what we do now. And so we need to find a way of thinking, a way of understanding that enables us to react or respond to the states of adversity that come up to inspire us in doing more good deeds, not in being angry, greedy, hateful, full of rage about effects that are happening right now. The value of this life and of all our future lives is determined by what we are doing now and not by what we are getting now. This point is very important. Everything that happens to us should be perceived as an opportunity for growth. All who cultivate themselves in this great way, and all who enter upon the path of the Bodhisattva way, to alleviate not only our own suffering, but the suffering of others. This is the Bodhisattva Ideal. So all who cultivate themselves in this great way, and all who enter upon the Bodhisattva path, begin with the ordinary, and through that achieve nirvana. Beginning with the ordinary, and through that achieving enlightenment. So these ordinary difficulties, these ordinary obstructions, boundaries, adversities, conflicts, stresses, confusions, judgments, if we can respond to them with mindfulness, with detachment, as a reminder to grow and develop, to do good deeds, then these ordinary situations, this ordinary mind that can get very upset and very involved and very silly, through that ordinariness can attain nirvana, can attain the ending of suffering. Not just for things to get a little bit better, a little bit more peaceful, to be a little bit more chill, a little bit more based. No, but the ending of suffering, the ending of dissatisfaction, the establishment of peace. Careful in speech, controlled in body, aware of the workings of the mind, patient under insult, renouncing anger. This is the path of great progress. So take a moment to find your meditation position. Comfortable, stable, sincere kind of position. You can close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Feel the breath in the body. Following the breath as it flows deeply into the body, all the way down the neck, the chest, into the belly. The breath flowing all the way in, expanding the lungs and flowing out. Relaxing and releasing any tension, any tightness, any judgment. Allowing the body and the mind to come together, to be together at this moment. Okay, so everyone is invited to bring their hands together, and we will finish our session today with a short chanting. And you're welcome to chant along with me or to simply listen deeply. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa Bhagavato arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa Bhagavato arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Sadhu. 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 Okay, thank you all for being here today. If anyone has a question or wants to share anything, it's all right. You can share. So I really appreciate everyone's attendance, and I hope that we can continue showing up together and making this a lively, healthy, and wealthy space for practice and community and teachings. We will have our next session at 6 a.m. California time with the Vietnam group. So that is in 9 hours from now, and that will be held through Zoom. So everyone is invited to join for that if you like. And then tomorrow, this session will be 2 hours earlier than usual. So Anushka, you might need to wake up really early if you want to join. But was that 5 a.m.? So that's not too early. That's a good start. But anyway, I hope I'll see you all again soon. And thank you for inspiring me. And I will do my best to continue trying to inspire others as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jonesky, if you're still here, the best thing that we can do is really to deepen our own peace, and then we share that peace with others in very subtle ways. Just giving them our attention, our presence consistently is a way that we can help to alleviate and to relax those quality of neuroses or emotional turmoil. So I wish you luck in that, Jonesky.